so listen closely. When darkness wraps the world and dreams begin to stir, you've arrived at the right place. Welcome to Between Dreams and Shadows, the sanctuary of stories that live between sleep and the unknown. Here, every tale is more than a story. It's a portal to hidden worlds, forgotten secrets, whispers from beyond, and shadows that speak as your eyes begin to close. If you're drawn to mysteries, haunting legends, and stories that send shivers down your spine, this channel is your new nighttime ritual. Before we begin, I invite you to become part of this growing nightbound community. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale. New stories drop regularly, always under the veil of night. Like this video if you enjoy that chill before sleep. It helps this channel grow and lets me bring you deeper, darker stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a strange dream? Or felt something watching in the dark? Your experience might inspire the next tale now. Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, leave the world behind, and get ready to drift. Between dreams and shadows, setting the atmosphere, it was just another sleepless night. The kind where silence feels heavier than noise, where the darkness in my bedroom presses against my skin like damp cloth. My name's Daniel. I live alone in a small apartment on the 4th floor of an aging building. Thin walls, creaking pipes, and windows that hum when the wind cuts just right. Lately, I'd developed a habit, or maybe a need. Every night, I played ambient sleep audios. Gentle rainfall, distant thunder, soft winds, sounds that lulled me away from the intrusive thoughts that never seemed to stop when the world got quiet. That night, it was different. I scrolled endlessly, looking for a new sound to try. Something deeper, something more immersive. I stumbled upon a file titled Deep Sleep Frequency 2 for Hertz Subconscious Cleanse. The thumbnail was just a plain black screen. No views, no comments. Uploaded just a day ago. I hesitated. Something about the silence in that page felt unnatural. But curiosity overpowered hesitation, as it often does when you're tired. The audio began, a deep, low hum, layered with soft crackling, like distant fire. It wasn't unpleasant. It was hollow, like listening to the sound of an empty room recorded for hours. I set my phone face down, closed my eyes, and let the sound fill the space. At first, it worked. My breathing slowed. My mind floated. Then, the lights flickered. Just once, a soft pulse, barely noticeable, but enough to make me open my eyes, and suddenly feel like I wasn't as alone as I thought. The first signs of disturbance for a moment. I convinced myself it was just a voltage dip. This building wasn't exactly known for reliable wiring, but as I lay back down, something gnawed. At the back of my mind, the hum from the audio deepened, almost imperceptibly. It felt like it wasn't just in my ears, but inside the walls, beneath the floor, leaking into the corners of my room. I turned my head toward the window. The curtain. It shifted. Slowly. A movement too soft for the still air of a closed room. I held my breath, waiting for something, anything, to justify it. But nothing came. Then came the click. A soft, deliberate sound. My eyes shot toward the desk. The pen that had been resting near my notebook was now rolling, gently, spinning, as though nudged by a breath that wasn't mine. I sat up. My heart thudded in my ears, drowning the hum for a second. I scanned the room. Everything looked normal, or at least, it pretended to. The shadows in the corner felt thicker, as if they weren't just absence of light, but presence of something else. Their edges weren't sharp anymore. They bled. Slightly, vibrating softly as if the audio itself was giving them form. I tried turning the audio off, but my phone screen stayed black. Tapping it did nothing. No light, no response. And then the closet door. I could swear I didn't leave. It ajar. It was open, just slightly. Just enough for me to notice. I told myself I was imagining it. That fatigue was playing tricks. That's what the mind does in the dark, right? But a quiet voice beneath all those reassurances whispered otherwise. It whispered, "It noticed you." The sound that shouldn't exist. I froze, my breath shallow, straining to hear beyond the suffocating hum that filled the room, and then, beneath it, something else emerged. It was subtle at first, a faint, rhythmic pulse, almost like breathing, not mine, not any human breathing I'd ever heard. It was layered, distorted, broken into fragments that didn't fit together properly, as if someone or something was trying to mimic what breathing should sound like, and failing. Then came the whisper, not words. No, it was the shape of words, the suggestion of syllables formed just beyond understanding, as though a voice was pressing against a veil of sound, trying to bleed through, but not fully making it. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't coming from the speaker anymore. It was coming from inside the room. A soft shuffle near the foot of my bed. I bolted upright, eyes wide. Nothing, absolutely nothing. The space was empty, visually, but my skin told me otherwise. Every nerve screamed that something was wrong, horribly wrong. The air itself felt heavier, as if charged with static that made the tiny hairs on my arms rise. And then, clear as day, a whisper sliced through the hum. "Don't stop listening." My throat tightened. I scrambled for my phone, desperate to shut the audio off, but the screen remained dead, black, cold, as if the device itself was no longer part of this world. Then, another sound. Closer, wet, subtle, like fingertips dragging slowly across the wall, just inches behind me. I whipped around. Nothing door, rather. Nothing that wanted to be seen. But the worst part wasn't what I heard. It was the realization dawning on me. The hum? It was answering something. It wasn't just sound. It was a signal, the presence. Without a face, the realization sank deeper into my bones. This wasn't just noise. This wasn't just an audio file. Something was using it as a doorway. A sudden, sharp creak echoed from the corner near the closet. I snapped my gaze toward it, barely able to breathe. The door, once just slightly ajar, was now open wider. Not by much, just enough to make me notice. Just enough to make it clear that it had moved. Again, but there was nothing there, no. Not nothing. I could feel it. A pressure, like when someone stands too close behind you, just far enough not to touch, but close enough that your body knows they're there. My skin prickled. My pulse throbbed in my ears. The temperature shifted. Subtle, but undeniable. A coldness that wasn't the natural chill of night. It was focused, directed, alive. Then in the corner of my vision, something moved. I turned instantly, but nothing met my eyes, only shadows. But the movement hadn't come from the shadows themselves. It had come from the space between them. As if the darkness was bending around something that refused to be fully seen. A small noise drew my attention, the sound of paper slipping. I looked toward my desk. My notebook had shifted, not fallen, but slid, as though pushed by invisible fingers. The pen rolled again, stopping abruptly at the notebook's edge, balanced precariously, before tipping over and falling to the floor with a hollow clatter. My breathing quickened. I pressed back against the headboard, staring wildly at the room that no longer felt like mine. I wasn't alone. I hadn't been since I pressed play. I could feel it circling me, watching, but without eyes. The worst part wasn't what I could hear or see. It was what I felt. The terrifying certainty that whatever this thing was, it didn't have a face. Because it didn't need one. It had presence. It had intent. And in the growing silence between each flicker of the lights, I realized it wanted me to know that. The unspoken warning low tremor rumbled through the floor, so faint it might have been imagined. But it wasn't. I felt it in my teeth, in the back of my skull, in the hollow space of my chest, and then the hum shifted. The once steady frequency twisted into something broken, staggered pulses, distorted echoes, like a corrupted transmission struggling to stay alive. Beneath it, layered deep in the audio, came something else. A pattern, 3 sharp pulses, a pause, then 2 longer, droning hums, another pause. Then it repeated. It was deliberate, structured like a code. My logical mind scrambled to make sense of it. Was it Morse code? Was this part of the file? But something deeper inside me, something primal, didn't care about decoding it. It simply understood. This was a warning I wasn't supposed to hear. My eyes darted back to the closet, the door now fully open. The void behind it seemed impossibly dark, darker than the natural absence of light should ever allow. It was thick, like ink spilled across the fabric of reality. Then click. The overhead light flickered again, once, twice, then off. Total darkness swallowed the room, but the hum continued, louder now, closer, as though it wasn't coming from the phone anymore, but from every surface in the room. The floor vibrated, the walls pulsed, and then something new, a slow, deliberate inhale. Right next to me, I could feel the warmth of it brush against my neck, damp, uneven, as though whatever was breathing didn't have lungs made for this world. I bolted upright, smacking the lamp beside my bed, but it didn't turn on. Dead useless. That's when I noticed it, scratched lightly into the wooden frame of the closet door, barely visible, but unmistakably there, under the pale light of the street lamp filtering through the window. Stay listening. Oh, or it comes through. My throat tightened, a panic I couldn't fully process building like pressure behind my ribs. I didn't know if turning the audio off would make it worse, or if keeping it playing was the only thing, keeping this thing there, and not here. The most terrifying thought. Maybe it wasn't a warning. Maybe it was a rule. The moment of truth, I stared at the carved words, my breath ragged, my body frozen between fight and flight, though neither seemed like a real option anymore. The hum shifted again, no longer passive, no longer background. It was breathing with me. Every inhale I took, it inhaled. Every exhale, it followed half a second later, like a delayed, mocking echo. My mind raced. If the rule was to keep listening, then what happens if I stop? What happens if the sound ends? Or worse, if the sound was never meant to end? The lights flickered. Once more, a violent pulse that painted the room in staccato flashes. And in one of those flashes, something stood in the closet. It wasn't a shape I could describe, not human, not even creature, a distortion, like the air itself had been folded, twisted into something vaguely upright. Its edges frayed, its outline glitching, pieces of shadow and static that refused to settle into a recognizable form. My instincts screamed to run, but where? The door was across the room, past the closet, past it. Then the audio stuttered. For a single, horrible second, silence, no hum, no breathing, nothing. And in that silence, the presence moved. The floor groaned under the weight of something invisible, yet undeniable. I felt it. Step, once, twice. The sound wasn't even heavy. It was worse, soft, careful, like a predator trying not to startle its prey. Until it was close enough. The hum kicked back on, louder, more distorted than ever, and with it, the footsteps stopped, frozen mid-step, as if the sound had pulled it back, or trapped it. I realized, with sickening clarity, the sound wasn't for me, it was for it. A boundary, a leash, but that leash was fraying. I had 2 choices, let it break, or find out if there was a way to stop it before it snapped completely. But every second I hesitated, the flickering grew worse. The shadows lengthened. The air pressed tighter. It was waiting for me to decide. The inevitability of darkness. My pulse hammered against my ribs, drowning out every rational thought. The walls seemed to breathe. The air throbbed, contracting and expanding with each flicker of the light, each pulse of that oppressive hum, and then a sound, new, subtle, a crack, like strained wood. No, not wood. It was the sound of something thin, something fragile, starting to splinter. The leash, the boundary this sound had enforced was breaking. Every instinct screamed it. I lunged for my phone, dead screen, cold glass, and slammed my thumb against the power button. The volume, the side, anything. Useless. The hum wasn't coming from the phone anymore. It was coming from everywhere, from the room itself. The thing in the closet. It shifted. No footsteps this time, just presence. It slid, like a shadow detaching itself from reality. Its form barely held together, warped, stuttering, unraveling, as though it existed between frames of existence, only visible when the lights flickered, vanishing in the moments between. The notebook on my desk flipped open violently, pages fluttering as if caught in a storm that wasn't there. Words appeared, scratched onto the paper, as if by invisible claws. Silence invites it in. My breath hitched. The audio, the hum, was the only thing keeping. This thing tethered on the other side, but it was decaying, fading, warping. The lights dimmed, and stayed dim. No more flickering, just a low glow, barely enough to see. Then the closet. It groaned. Not the door, the void beyond it. The darkness itself pulsed outward, as if something was pushing, stretching to pass through. A gut rasp filled the air, a wet, broken sound, like air being forced through something that wasn't built to breathe. You, heard me, It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a fact. The presence stepped forward, no longer hiding, no longer pretending, and that's when I understood the cruel truth. There was no stopping this. This wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a glitch. It was a rule, a consequence for hearing something not meant for me. The line between my world and its was paper thin now, and paper always tears. The fear that stays. The final flicker of light vanished. Total darkness swallowed everything, but darkness wasn't empty. It was full of something ancient, something patient, something that had waited far longer than I could ever comprehend, not for me specifically, but for anyone foolish enough to listen. The hum collapsed into static, sharp, violent. It shredded the air like broken glass dragged across metal. My hands clamped over my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound wasn't in my ears anymore. It was inside me. The whisper came again, but no longer distorted, no longer distant. Now. You never stop listening. A rush of air, or what felt like air, brushed past my face. I flinched, shrinking back into the bed frame, but there was nowhere left to retreat. The closet wasn't just a door anymore. It was a hole, a wrong place that had become a mouth, not to bite, but to consume. And then, nothing. Not silence, not sound, a nothingness so thick it pressed against my chest like water, like drowning. I don't remember falling asleep, if that's even what happened. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe it let me go. Or maybe it did single quotes, because when I woke the next morning, if it was morning, the lights were fine. My phone worked perfectly. The audio file was gone. No history, no record, as if it never existed. But the hum didn't leave. It stayed low, faint, right, at the edge of hearing. It followed me in the silence between conversations, beneath the static of empty channels, hiding inside the hum of appliances, waiting inside the quiet moments before sleep. The rule had changed. I would always be listening now, because if the sound stops, it comes back, and one day, it might not wait by the closet. Could you sleep after hearing this? What do you think was really behind that sound? Let me know in the comments, and if you dare, step deeper into the unknown by watching another story before you turn out the lights, if you still can.